Okay, thank you. So we'll hand over to Donald Morrison from Home Energy Scotland first, just to run through what support packages they have and how Home Energy Scotland can help communities and individuals. So over to you, Donald.
Okay, thank you very much. As introduced, my name is Donald Morrison, and today I've been asked to tell you a bit about the organisation I represent in the Western Isles and what support we can offer households. Home Energy Scotland is funded by the Scottish Government and managed by the Energy Savings Trust. And there are 5 centres throughout Scotland, located in Inverness for the Highlands and Islands, Aberdeen, Edinburgh, Glasgow and South West. And if you call our free phone number, which is 0808 808 2282, from anywhere in Scotland, then it'll take you through to your nearest centre. I only do actually work with the private housing sector. So if you were getting in touch with me regarding a social tenant, then I would probably either redirect you to HHP or to Tighean Innse Gall. Like I said, I cover the whole of the Western Isles. I spend 1 week a month working in the Southern Isles, and I have colleagues based in Shetland, in Orkney, in Eilean Siar, as well as 4 who work out of our Inverness office. And between us, we cover the whole of the Highlands and Islands. We also have an advice centre based in Inverness, who will deal with any query you may have, and if they think that would be of benefit to the householder, they will put a referral through to me for a home visit. I do work very closely in partnership with the organisations in the Western Isles, like Community Energy Scotland, Tighean Innse Gall, the Comhairle, Citizens Advice, Macmillan's benefit officers, and advocacy as well. And between us, I do believe that we offer a wide range of services, and we're all aware of what each of the other partners offer and what sectors they specialise in. For example, if in the course of a conversation with a householder that I think that advice on energy tariffs or switching is suitable, I would always signpost the householder to Tighean Innse Gall, who are very experienced officers in this field. Or if I feel if somebody is eligible for benefits, which could in turn allow them to qualify for a free heating system, then I would look to the Comhairle or to the Citizens Advice Bureau. And quite often we will work collectively, which gives the householder a better opportunity to access any assistance available and maximise any outcomes. My advice of necessity has to be impartial. We don't sell anything. We don't have any vested interest in any kind of heating systems. We're just there to advise on what might be best in terms of heating and insulating someone's property, how they might be able to secure financial assistance in terms of interest-free loans and small grants from Scottish Government. My role is not to tell somebody what to do. It's to engage someone in conversation about the fabric of the property, to discuss what heating options are best suited to the property and to the householder's lifestyle, and maybe what fabric improvements should be considered before installing their chosen system. Now, no system is perfect. There's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all. No system is perfect or will suit all lifestyles. And I see my role as trying to present to the householder the benefits and the drawbacks of different systems to assist them to make their decision-making process. But ultimately, the final decision has to be the householders. If they want to ignore my advice, I won't be offended. We all have our own ideas. And it may be that all that I help do is help the householder decide what they don't want to install. Now, there are 3 roles that I fulfill. One is working with community officers and local partners. One is advising on renewable technology for both new builds and in a retrofit situation. And thirdly, but which probably takes up most of my time, is helping to promote and deliver the Scottish Government's Warmer Home Scotland scheme. So as I mentioned, we give advice on renewable technology in the domestic setting, electrical generation in terms of wind and solar PV, as well as heat generation in terms of heat pumps, biomass technology, and solar thermal high heat retention storage heaters. I also advise on oil and gas boilers, for which support was withdrawn recently by Scottish Government. So if somebody were to choose to install this, then there would be no financial support available. But as I said, my advice has to be impartial, and if I believe a householder's property and lifestyle is better suited to a rapid reactive system heating such as oil, then it would be included in my recommendations. But I would also advise that that would have to be self-funded. In terms of electrical generation, domestic systems are limited currently to 3.6 kilowatt due to difficulties with the capacity of the connection to the mainland. And Donald John referred to that earlier. And that is going to remain the case until that particular issue is solved. We have for now the option for the installation of a battery system, which would allow you to store energy generated through the day to allow you to use it at night. And we would help you decide what the cost benefits, if any, were in terms of electrical generation. With heat pumps, we would visit and survey the property, discuss what the householder's options were and advise on insulation and draft proofing. I would also raise the matter of behavioural change. Heat pump technology is very different from oil, gas or night storage. It's very important to keep a heightened awareness of areas of heat loss, such as open doors and open windows, and the effect this can have on energy and consumption. It's incredible to, when we start looking at our behaviour and how we interact with our heating systems and how we interact with our homes, we're all really very negligent. There's a lot that we can do to save heat and retain heat in the property, and it's just maybe a case of raising that awareness. So we will advise on what assistance is available from Scottish Government in terms of interest-free loans, and if there's a cashback scheme in operation, then we would talk about the benefits of taking that option up as well. For renewable heat, such as heat pumps and biomass, an interest-free loan scheme of up to £10,000 is available. There's also the renewable heat incentive, which is a quarterly payment made to you for 7 years. The value of this incentive is based on the heat demand of the householder's property following install. And Scottish Government is currently offering a cashback scheme whereby you can get 75% of the cost of the heat pump up to £7,500 immediately. But this is not in addition to the RHI, but offers an early payment. And if there's a balance due, then that would be paid over a 7-year period. So if your heat pump is going to cost you £10,000, then you'll get an interest-free loan of £2,500 and a cashback payment of £7,500. Now, the renewable heat incentive is due to be withdrawn in March of next year. There are various measures being talked about or incentives being talked about, but they haven't been finalised yet, although Scottish Government have indicated that they are going to retain the cashback offer. Wind and solar benefits, PV benefit from a £5,000 interest-free loan scheme and the smart export guarantee. And if you decide you wish to, or the householder wants to apply for the interest-free loan, then their application must be accompanied by a recommendation from me for the chosen measure. And this would normally come in the form of a report, which I would prepare for you following a visit to your property. And if it's for a new build, I can usually draft the report from the new build plans. Now, I mentioned earlier the Warmer Home Scotland scheme. This is a benefit-driven scheme aimed at assisting those who are part of what would be classed as a vulnerable household. And this is where my interaction with community groups I really value, because being on my own, I cannot hope to have an awareness of every vulnerable house in the Western Isles. So it's good to have contacts in local communities who can maybe promote the scheme to individuals. So you would have to be a homeowner or a private tenant, have been in residence for at least 12 months and meet conditions related to personal circumstances and having a qualifying benefit. Examples would be somebody who's over 75 or of a pensionable age with a broken heating system and in receipt of attendance allowance or in receipt of the guarantee element of pension credit. Someone who's in receipt of the high rate disability living allowance or personal independent payments, in receipt of child tax credits and have a child of under 16, or maybe in receipt of carers allowance. And these are the main ones, but I'm happy to come and see any householder who aren't quite sure if they would qualify. And even if they don't, I can give advice regarding what may be available in terms of interest-free loans, given advice on energy efficiency, and maybe direct them to any local schemes which may be available. Unfortunately, for private sector tenants, there's only access available to the insulation measures offered by Warmer Homes Scotland. And the reason for this is in Scotland, it is a private sector landlord's responsibility to ensure that there's an adequate heating system in place. But we do also offer interest-free loans to private sector landlords. Currently, Warmer Homes Scotland are offering night storage systems or air source heat pumps. Usually the night storage systems would be installed free of charge, and there is also usually a householder contribution required for the installation of heat pumps. They may also offer some insulation and in some cases new external doors or secondary glazing if the house or the property only has single glazing. At the beginning of September, due to a change in Scottish Government policy, Warmer Homes Scotland can no longer offer oil or LPG gas as a measure. If you are aware of a householder who has those, then they would only be offered either high heat retention storage heaters or air source heat pumps if they were suitable. And this is causing us an issue for us because properties aren't necessarily suited to air source heat pumps and would require maybe some a fair degree of modernization in terms of insulation and draft proofing. So then there would be a high heat retention storage heater that would be offered. And currently, although with the increase in energy costs, it might be changing, but it costs a lot more to run high heat retention storage heaters than oil boilers. Now, I would also add that because of the shortage of local contractors who are Warmer Homes approved installers, we are having to use mainland contractors now. And I'm very aware that this may cause, in fact, has caused consternation among households, given the very difficult experiences of the past 3 or 4 years, where there has been an abundance of questionable installs from often unidentifiable and untraceable mainland contractors offering fee measures, and the mess left behind, we are trying to work our way through and trying to repair any damage that was made. But what I can offer and say is that if a householder is concerned, that a Warmer Homes install is backed up by an independent post-install inspection. There's a 1-year Warmer Homes Scotland guarantee on parts and labour, and after that there's a manufacturer's warranty that kicks in. And also the householder would have my contact details should anything go wrong. If you were to ask me what the biggest issue facing householders in the Western Isles just now, apart from the obvious issue of spiralling energy costs, it's old and efficient night storage heating, old and efficient oil boilers, and a lack of insulation. Quite often we hear of the term hard to treat houses. In the Western Isles, that often brings to mind the tradition of 2 up, 2 down, lean-to kitchen and bathroom to the back, or a variation on that design. And the reason for there being so many of them is that if you wanted the board loan back in the early to mid 20th century, then you had to build to a certain design. Properties might have been built of stone or poured concrete walls, sloped ceilings upstairs with a narrow strip of a loft. When I started in 2010 in this job, all that was really being offered was to insulate the narrow loft space, but that has progressed through what is referred to as the HEEPS-ABS, the Home Energy Efficiency Programme for Scotland area-based scheme, which is delivered through the Comhairle and managed and delivered by Tighean Innse Gall. And that has included in the past external wall insulation, internal wall insulation, room and roof insulation, as well as loft and underfloor. And they have been able to attract millions of pounds of government money, which has benefited many householders but there are still many requiring help. And like many other schemes, COVID has had a severe impact on its delivery. I'm a great believer in fabric first. So my advice to a householder would always be think about insulation and draft proofing first. It's amazing the difference that simple measures such as a heavy curtain can do to a cold room. Not all solutions have to be expensive. But if a householder is considering insulation, my advice would always be that the first stop is Tighean Innse Gall. In the main, Home Energy Scotland, although we do offer assistance with insulation, it tends to be mainly only in the format of an interest-free loan with a very small grant element. So always check and see what you can get locally, free at first, or for a very nominal householder contribution. So if anyone is interested in following up with me on any of the services I've spoken about, can I maybe suggest that you send an email to Kathleen, who can either forward your inquiry on to me, or she can give you my contact details. Can I also say, if any householders are concerned about COVID, we opt very strict COVID protocols. When I go out, I have to take regular lateral flow tests, and I'm required to report the results. I sanitize my hands immediately before coming into a property, and I will wear a mask at all times I'm in the property. That's all I have to say, but happy to try and answer any questions you may have. And if I can't answer them today, I'll do my best to follow up and come back to you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Donald. Very interesting, and good to have a refresher on what's available as well. Yes, like Donald said, like to open it up. Any questions from anyone on what's available? No, it's all very self-explanatory. That's very good. Well done, Donald. I'll come in with one. In terms of the renewable energy side, just out of interest, I mean, things have slowed down in terms of community renewables. I'm just wondering how it is with householders. I'm assuming air source heat pumps in new properties, for example, are very popular, but in terms of retrofit,
I would say that of my work with renewables, 95% of it relates to air source heat pumps. Now that will be, for a modern property, it's fairly straightforward, and it's the kind of the default setting for all householders who are required to put some form of insulation into any property. It becomes slightly more difficult when we're looking at retrofitting, because insulation plays a very important part in it. Air source heat pumps, a standard air source heat pump will deliver heat to a radiator at between 40 and 45 degrees. Your oil boiler delivers at 70 degrees. So we have to allow the heat to build up. You can't use an air source heat pump to force heat into a property for 2 hours and then switch it off for 2 hours, the way we use oil. And it's really important to talk to people about the required behavioral change, impress upon them their need to just to recognize that it's not the same as other heaters, but also things like leaving windows and doors open. I've been, the number of houses I've been into, people who have installed heat pumps and have phoned me up saying, oh, it's costing me a fortune. And yet when I go and visit them, they're doing things like leaving windows open, leaving doors open. I've been in houses where I went and knocked on the door, and the dog came back into the door. So when he opened the door, the dog came out, ran into the garden. And the guy said, oh, well, I'll just leave it. He'll come in when he's ready. We walked back into the house and we sat down, and he'd left the door. The back door was open. The door into the utility door was open. And the room was open. The door into the hall was left open. It was a 2-story open hallway up into a banister. And then we went into the kitchen, and he left the kitchen door open. And we sat and we talked for 15 minutes, and he moaned about how expensive the system was to run. And then when the dog came back in, I said, right, let's talk about what we did here. when you came to open the door for me, what you should have done was close the door to the utility room, close the door to the hall behind you, let me in, the dog wants to go out, the dog goes out and stays out, and then close the door. That way, the only heat he's lost is the heat in the porch area. As it was, he'd opened the whole house up, the heat was flying out the door, and the pump in the background was going into the clappers, trying to heat this property, but all it was doing was heating the outside. So there's a lot to do with behavioural change. And I think heat pumps have had a very bad press because of that, people who don't understand how to operate it. I'm not saying that there haven't been issues with installs, especially in the early days when it was a new technology, not only to the householder, but also, let's be realistic, to some of the installers as well. But nowadays, with modern air source heat pumps, as long as we are providing them with the environment they were designed for, which is an insulated and draft-proof property, and that we interact with them as the householder in the way we're meant to, then you have the opportunity of significantly reducing your heating bills and reducing your carbon emissions. So we have to take a responsibility. We have to take responsibility as householders for the way we use our heaters.
Yeah, no, we find that even on the community side with community halls, we find that with, say, heat pumps, you've got someone coming in and turning it up, and then someone coming in an hour later and turning it down. So there's a lot. And
also, with community halls as well, people maybe on a Saturday morning, if there's something on, and there's a sale of work on, or a coffee morning, people are wedging doors open and carrying stuff in and carrying stuff out, completely oblivious to the fact that there's a heat pump in the background going like the clappers, trying to heat the hall up, and it can't because the heat's just going out.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting discussion. I think we'll kind of open it up at the end as well for more discussion on that. But I don't know if anyone is going to come in there. Vanessa, I'm not sure if you're talking or it's just the connection.
I'm just here at the minute. Actually, I was just going to put in the chat. I didn't get, because it was a bit muffled, how one contacts Donald. What the phone number would be, or anything like that.
Well, you can either you can either send me an email or send me a text by mobile, or you could call the office in Inverness, which is 0808 808 2282. I will warn you that if you do phone it, they're required by Scottish Government to take you through a very lengthy phone call procedure in giving you advice. So my mobile number is, Kathleen can give you later on anyway, but it's 0755 44 56910, and my email address is donald.morrison@hi.homeenergyscotland.org. But most people get in touch with me through CAB, through Kathleen, through Donna, through any of the partner groups, and that's the beauty of the resilience group that we have formed, made up of frontline officers from the Western Isles, that I spoke about, with the local authority, with TIG, with CAB, with Macmillan's, and is that someone comes to me with a query, and I know I'm not an expert at answering it, but I know that one of my partners will do. I will pass it on to them. It's very unfortunate that certainly in the past, not so much now, it was very difficult for groups to work in partnership because we were all driven, not so much driven by KPIs, but we were required to achieve KPIs. And you thought, well, if I don't meet my KPI, if I don't get my advice on this person, we're not going to hit our targets, and it might affect our our chances of getting funding next year. Or if I share with another partner group, they might develop a project doing the same thing as I'm doing. So we were very insular, we were very inward looking. Whereas now, we work in partnership, we're not precious about who gets the credit for it. And of all my partners in the Western Isles, be it Comhairle Innse Scotland, TIG, Macmillan's, Local Authority Financial Inclusion Officers, CAB, any of those, the main thing that we look for is a positive outcome for the householder. And that's our driving force. And that's what I think is the beauty of the way that we work together in the Western Isles.
Thanks, Donald. I hope that answered your question, Vanessa. But yeah, Matthew has all the contacts, and I think what we'll do is we'll do a follow-up email after the session with Donald and Brian's contacts. And
thank you. Sally actually has put it in chat, so thanks very much.
Oh yes, I'm seeing that, and I'm seeing a message from Denise as well. I don't know if you're able to come in.
I think it sounds like Denise's mic is maybe not working.
Yeah.
I can hear, yeah, I can hear noise, but not what you're saying, Denise, unfortunately.
Would you be able to type into the chat? Okay, thanks, Denise. Sorry about that.
Yeah, feel free just to type any questions in the chat, Denise, and we can read them out.
Does anyone have any other questions meantime? Okay, I think what we'll do is just to give Denise a chance to type up the questions. If we go on to Brian at Tighean Innse Gall and just hear more about what they provide and how they help individuals. Donald's already given them a very good, shiny example of what partnership working is like. So that's brilliant. So we'll hand over to Brian to hear a bit more.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. And just once again, I want to go on the record and thank Community Energy Scotland for putting this wonderful event together. And I mean, how do you follow Donald? You know, it's difficult, isn't it? He does his thing so eloquently and fluently, and then you get this gibbering idiot coming on after him, and who knows whether you're going to learn anything from me or not. I don't know, but I shall do my best. So I have a few slides to show, and you're very welcome to ask questions throughout. Just stop me and say, Brian, what does that mean? Or tell me more about that, and I'm happy to elaborate any further if necessary. I will put some information in a more sort of condensed form, which I think Kathleen will be emailing out to everybody who's attended today, but you'd be very welcome to make contact with me directly at any point. So I'm going to try and share my screen, and you'll have to tell me whether you can see that or not. And I'm assuming yes, good. And then at some points I've got very short video clips, so you'll have to tell me if you can't hear sound. Okay, if you suddenly see things moving on the screen and you can't hear sound, please tell me. So if this will try, and for some reason, okay. So what I've done is I've put a few slides together, and I've tried to give some tips on what everyone can do in their own home. But just to set the scene in terms of why COP was so important and why the discussions that Matthew and Kathleen have put together this week are equally so important. Here is a slide from Climate Central that shows a zoomed out map of Stornoway and going into Point and Sandwich. I knew that DJ was going to be coming on today, so this was a special reference to Point and Sandwich from there. But you can see straight away the issues. Everything in red during the, in terms of flood timings, that will all be underwater. So you can see, you know, good luck getting to the airport if you want to be flying on a plane, which paradoxically, of course, is one of the issues of why climate change is happening, although our aircraft give less emissions from the ones that fly at higher altitudes. But nonetheless, that shows you Stornoway. This map, you can zoom out and then zoom in at all areas across the Western Isles. If I was to show you Uist on this map now, you would show an even worse situation, because Uist, of course, a lot of it is reclaimed land in the first place. So anyway, there's a scheme on Worldwide Fund for Nature where you can work out your climate carbon footprint, and Melinda and I, my partner and I's climate carbon footprint is slightly below the UK average, but still above the world average. And that's despite the fact that I live in an insulated house that's electrically heated. We drive an electric car or walk, and still our carbon footprint is significantly high. And all our light bulbs are LED lighting. So, you know, there's always more you can do. So for the perspective of the Outer Hebrides, the average Scottish household emissions for carbon dioxide are 4 tonnes. In the Outer Hebrides, it's 8 tonnes, so we're double. Principally, that's because many people live in detached homes. The ideal carbon friendly house type would be a well-insulated block of flats, actually. Detached houses in the Outer Hebrides are less efficient, and that is why, and equally, of course, people drive cars. So there's a higher carbon footprint there. That's an average. If we were to look at some households, it would be higher than that. So Donald talked about partnership working. Absolutely, that's the key mechanism to help people in the Outer Hebrides. And the reason why I say that is because if you, for example, come into the world of one of these organizations in the top box here in red, the chances are if you need support from one of them, you'll probably need support from all of them. And that's why we put together the Glossacala team effort, the moving together effort of trying to align services. And Donald mentioned about the energy resilience group. So when COVID kicked in, we, out of Glossacala, the baby of moving together, which is quite an interesting way of looking at it, was the energy resilience group. And that really was all of us being able to come together to help those people in most need. So we were able to supply things like food parcels. People who couldn't afford energy and on prepayment meters were given energy vouchers. I know that UCVO also gave out vouchers towards people's home oil and towards direct debits and things like that as well, where they had a separate fund to be able to achieve that. But for the rest of the islands, people were able to get energy vouchers. We also supplied new appliances for people who had broken appliances. So what that meant for somebody who had hit crisis mode was that they got food, they got the capacity to cook it, and they got the energy to run the cooker or the fridge to keep the food in. So we really pulled out all the stops to be able to do that. Now that's not a service that's available all the time. That's subject to us trying to draw in money to be able to do that. But one of the reasons why we were able to draw in that money was principally because we do work so closely together through the Glossacala principle. So if someone comes into the TIG family, you know, Donald mentioned about the energy advice team being able to help with some switching or billing inquiries or metering and stuff like that. That's really through the CHESS team, the Energy Advisory Service team. They will help with like the social aspects of energy, and they will be able to liaise with energy companies if there's a problem with a metering issue, which actually for detached households is a higher percentage than in city areas. It's been recognised in the new fuel poverty strategy that billing and metering issues for remote rural areas is a significantly higher problem. And that's why the local energy advice service deal with that. Donna and Charlie work with me on the Energy Measures project that's funded by the EU. That's why you see the EU flag in the bottom of this slide. And we will be able to then identify small measures that can be done immediately. And I'll come on to those in a second. And we then look at the bigger stuff, the structural changes to properties to be able to make a difference there. If that's most appropriate through the Cawler area-based scheme, then that would be funded through that. If it's more appropriate to be supported by Home Energy Scotland and Warmer Homes Scotland, that's where Donald comes in. And, you know, we cross-refer all the time. Just in terms of the importance of those cross-referrals, Warmer Homes Scotland, the national scheme, got more referrals from the Home Energy Scotland Inverness office, the Highlands and Islands office, than any other region in Scotland. In terms of the installs, the number of installs or proportion of households per 1,000 people in the population in the Highlands was higher than any other region in Scotland, and in the Islands it was double. And I would probably guess that most of those referrals, or a statistically higher number, came from the Western Isles. So we're doing our bit. So the criteria for support from TIG through the area-based scheme and through the Energy Measures project is basically you have to be a private rented or owner-occupier. Private rented is quite a small percentage of properties in the islands, and there'll be sizable chunks of those privately rented who are off the grid. They're renting off a cousin or an auntie or something like that, or they may be in life residence, and there's a whole number of issues around that, but nonetheless we can still help for those people. If anyone's in a council tax A, B or C, it's immediate. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are, because that's a proxy for basically lower incomes. If they're in a council tax band D or F or G, then we can help as long as they're on a qualifying benefit or there's disability in the household. And then we do a survey on the property, and the survey says, yes, actually that measure is necessary. And if it's more appropriate for Donald and Home Energy Scotland / Warmer Homes Scotland to deliver that, then we'll make the referral at that point. So here's a few things that Donna and Charlie can do. They will be able to come out to your house and give advice on what measures can be done and what behavioural change can be done to save energy, and for the purposes of this presentation, also carbon. So you'd be amazed, 43% of households in the Western Isles use oil to heat their homes, and so they have radiators like this. These reflective radiator panels bounce the heat back into the room rather than going into the wall. So they help keep and retain heat in there, and that obviously has a reduction in carbon emissions subsequent to that. Chimney balloons, loads of properties have unused chimneys in them. If they're open, effectively all the heat from the house gets sucked out and blown up into the air. So I'm hopefully going to now show you. Can you hear the sound?
Do you suffer from chimney drafts? Fit a chimney balloon. They're cheap and easy to install. Just pop the balloon up the chimney and inflate. Remember, you can't light a fire when the balloon is installed, so once it's secure, make sure the string is visible so you don't forget it's there. Remember, always call Chess, the energy advisor.
So 10 points if you recognize the voice there. The next one I would say, draft proofing. We won't now fit draft proofing if we're going to internally insulate the house, and that's because of new ventilation legislation. So if we're going to be insulating the house, then we won't be doing the internal draft proofing. But if we're not going to be insulating the house and the house needs draft proofing, then we can do that. And that again has quite a sizable chunk in terms of the emissions of retaining heat in the rooms. And that comes back to what Donald was talking about earlier. Doors being left open all over the place is one thing, but equally, if you've got gaping holes underneath doors or whatever, then that can have an issue as well. And I'll show you very briefly.
Don't throw your money away. Have draft proofing installed and save around £50 off your heating bill. Draft proofing can be quickly fitted by trained TIG installers, ensuring the right materials are used for your home.
So obviously there was draft proofing. One of the other things that we can do for those people who still have oil boilers and they haven't been replaced by Donald and his merry men of the Warmer Homes Scotland team with heat pumps, we can get your oil boiler serviced. Again, the same criteria for all of these things. The oil boiler servicing will make sure that it's running efficiently and will reduce the running costs, basically. It won't reduce the emissions per se, but not by much anyway, but it will certainly reduce, it will make it more efficient, and it will cost less to run. So we can arrange for an oil boiler servicing to happen. And also we'll look at your storage heaters. If your storage heaters are broken, either they'll be replaced by Warmer Homes Scotland, because we'll make the referral to Donald, or for a small number of properties, we may do that ourselves within TIG, because we have some funding to replace old storage heaters that are broken, but only if they're what we call under duress, i.e. they're not actually working. Donna and Charlie can install some LED lighting for you, and so the LED bulbs that we use are the one that you can see in the middle of the screen there, so they look like the old filament bulbs, and they also can work on a dimmer switch. So we'll put those in your house if you have old incandescent bulbs, or the old compact fluorescent light bulbs, the funny looking ones that stick out the bottom of lampshades. If you've got those, LEDs are twice as efficient as they are, so we'll replace those as well. But Donna and Charlie will do that as part of a home visit. They will talk with you about how you use energy at the home. They'll draw up an energy plan to look at specifically what can be done for you and with you, and then they'll work out behavior change options as well. So, and they will support you over a period of up to 2 years. So it's a good deal for the householder. I haven't talked too much about the project. I wish I had now, but anyway, these are the measures that we'll do. We'll give you a top up there. Most houses have some insulation. You can see on the picture there, we've got my colleague Ian laying insulation on top of the old stuff, and that's really to bring it up to the required amount to make your house more efficient. And we'll do that. We also look at internal wall insulation and room and roof insulation. At the moment, we've paused on doing those because there's been a change in the legislation about certain ventilation requirements. And you may have seen stuff in the local media about Alistair Allen raising questions in the Scottish Parliament. Stuart Wilson, my boss, and I met with Patrick Harvey, the Energy Efficiency Minister, with Alistair Allen just a couple of weeks ago to talk through some of the issues, and we're looking at that. So the stuff has been paused temporarily on these big things, but it will start again quite soon. And that's what it looks like when you put internal wall insulation. On the left-hand side, you can see there that it's literally put onto the walls directly. And that's obviously a house in Stornoway. And then on the right hand side, there's a room in the roof insulation being installed there. That was a couple of years ago, but nonetheless, it's accurate. And then what happens is it gets covered over, and then obviously it's painted after. So what does a ton of carbon look like? Ta-da! There is a ton of carbon, and then the illustration is next to a London bus. So I threw in a picture of a London bus there. Obviously, I'm just, for those of you who remember Father Ted and the whole bit about perspective and the size of a cow in the field, the double-decker bus is not the size of Angus MacNeil. It's significantly bigger than that. But I threw that in just to show, you know, that's what a ton of carbon looks like. So when you talk about 8 tons of carbon from your average house in the Outer Hebrides, you've got to think big, basically. And then imagine that's all of us doing that. So you get people saying things like, oh, it doesn't matter what I do here. The carbon emissions from here don't just go up into a special part of the atmosphere just for the Outer Hebrides. They go into the global atmosphere. So every single emission from everywhere gets added together. So by you doing your bit, you are helping. You are helping. It's not a drop in the ocean. It is part of the ocean. And you have to, you know, and I know I'm mixing metaphors and I can talk platitudes until the cows come home, but, you know, it is important that all of us do our bit. And we, as an island community, you know, we have to look other island communities in the eye. You know, places like Tuvalu, which will disappear. So our sisters and brothers in Tuvalu, whose livelihoods will go, their islands will go, in part because of our emissions. You know, we have to be able to look them in the eye and say, we have done our part. So we must all take action, and hopefully the stuff I'm telling you about will give you some tips and ideas. So future stuff that TIG are going to be doing, Donald, Donna and I have worked on a project pulling together some money, which hopefully we'll be hearing about by January, where we're going to be able to install some small wind turbines for domestic properties. Already through the area-based schemes, special projects, we're going to be able to install solar panels, batteries, electric charge points, wet heat batteries. So that's all about storing hot water to then heat radiators, linked to air source heat pumps. So all of these quite new, they're not new technologies. You know, wind turbines have been around for hundreds of years, you know, but just using them to generate domestic energy is a slightly different thing. But air source heat pumps have been around for decades. You know, the reason Donald was talking about the type of house, you know, people in Scandinavia use heat pumps and have been for decades. The difference is they insulated their properties and they made sure that the internal door configurations were more sophisticated than what we have done in terms of helping to retain heat in properties. So none of this is new, but it's going to be newish to the island. So we'll be finding out about these future things shortly. That small wind turbine, we'll only be doing about 7 of those across. The idea is 1 per main island, basically. And that will be installed free for an owner-occupier or a private renter on a domestic property, as I say, on each of the islands. And the average savings from that will be about £2,000 a year off someone's energy bill. So we hope to be able to shape future area-based schemes on the basis of saying, look, this type of kit can work. So there's quite a lot going on. I'll just finish on
And you'll take the high road and I'll take the low road and I'll have a shower rather than a bath. Saves energy, saves money, good for the environment. And don't spend too long in the shower either. 5 minutes max. You don't need any more.
And there are my colleagues, Donna and Charlie, and I think Donna's on the call with us. Can I just say, in order to get any help from any of these people, it's absolutely vital that people fill in this smart survey. Because of COVID, we've not been able to get out and see so many people, but we can analyze the results from this smart survey immediately and be able to look into possible help for people before we even visit. Now, if people don't have access to the internet, that's fine. Donna and Charlie can ring them and fill in on their behalf. So, you know, I cannot impress enough upon you to share the link of this smart survey. And I think it's going to be in the email that Kathleen will send to you all after this meeting, but I can put it in the chat, or Donna can put it in the chat as well. But yeah, Charlie covers Harris and Lewis, Donna covers Euston Barra, and they're the point people to be able to help. They can identify the best mechanisms to help, or like Donald, if they're not sure, they'll be able to ask other colleagues, but certainly they will be able to make referrals. And we liaise constantly with, you know, the Caller Financial Inclusion team to look at any other financial support available for people. We liaise obviously with Donald on a daily basis, and with other partners as well, like the Citizens Advice Bureau and Macmillan and people like that. So there's always something we can do to help. And so that's really the main messages I want to get across. There is something there to help, and you can contact us and we will do our very best to help you. And that, I think, is me.
Thanks, Brian. I really wasn't expecting a video of you in the shower as part of that presentation.
I just thought I'd keep you all on your toes.
Indeed. I can't make up my mind whether it should have been post-watershed or not.
You know what? I gave a talk in Thurso in the cinema there, and I had that show. I had my own shower scene on a cinema. And for those of you, you'll get the film reference there, I'm sure.
Yes, moving on. So we, Donald, first of all, a thank you to Brian for that. And I think it's useful for everyone to see the different kinds of support there is out there for houses, particularly now with energy prices going up and prices for everything in general increasing. So the more we can try and support people to save money as well as saving on carbon, then the better. just to go back to Denise's question, Donald, are you happy if we go offline and discuss that? Because I think she's had to drop off, and I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Does anyone have any questions for Brian following his presentation?
Can I just pick up on something that Brian said about how we work as partnership and with Donna? Next week is my monthly visit to Uist, and I go down on Tuesday and back on Friday, and in that period I will be seeing 12 appointments, and of these 12 appointments, 5 of them came from Donna. So I will be seeing, so over the past month, past 3 weeks, Donna has sent me 5 referrals. I make the arrangements, and so I'm seeing them. I'm seeing them next week. So that's the kind of the time scale for the US. That's the way it works. So if they contact Donna within a month, I'll be down to see them.
Okay, thanks, Donald. I'm noticing Sally's got a question in the chat. Can I confirm that if your council tax bands A to C, you're automatically eligible regardless of income?
Yes.
Okay, Sally, anything else you wanted to ask on that, or is that?
Yeah, the reason why is, but usually, you know, 95% of the people in A to C, or at least 3/4 of people in A to C, are usually on lower incomes, just on the basis of the house value, you know, and so it's used as a proxy by the caller to say that those households are usually in fuel poverty. To get support from Donna and Charlie in terms of personal advice and having them as your personal energy advisor for 2 years, you have to be in fuel poverty. So you need to be spending more than 10% of your income to heat your home or to use energy in the home. And what that means is, by having a personal energy advisor for the 2 years, they are your main contact for anything, like there's new schemes or anything that comes up, they will be able to tell you, but they also draw up an energy plan for you. And that then gives you information on how you use energy currently, to what you can potentially save, to then monitor those savings. So that means every now and again you give meter readings. So we're able to say, well, listen, before you were spending this amount, now you're spending this amount. So we can monitor how much energy you've saved. And through that, we can also look at how much emissions you've saved as well. So from a perspective of, you know, the climate change issue, we can help be able to advise you on your emissions in the home and what your emissions reductions have been. So it's quite, you know, holistic. That's really for those people in fuel poverty, simply because that's what the EU funded us to deliver for that project. But everyone will get help and advice. And if you're not in fuel poverty but still need the measures and you're eligible, then you'll simply be referred to the insulation team for that, or to Warmer Home Scotland, depending on the relevance of the measure and your personal circumstance.
Okay, thank that does lead quite nicely to referrals and the amount of the different schemes. And I know for you guys it's very clear because you're working there in that arena all the time, but say for someone, is there a sort of 1-page A4 sheet that says, if you want this scheme, you speak to this person? Or, you know, is there anything that we could maybe send out that shows exactly how the signposting could work?
There's so many fluctuations. Like, for example, recently, you know, when the Scottish government decided that they weren't going to support any new oil boiler systems, we would have to update it quite often.
Okay.
And that's not impossible to do. We worked principally on the basis of, if you come to one of us, you'll almost certainly, if it's more relevant for you to be supported by the other one, we'll pass you on to the other one anyway. So in some respects, it doesn't matter who you come to, you'll end up being sent to the right person regardless.
Okay.
I think that's right. Would you say that's right, Donald?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much so. I mean, it might be, let's say, for example, that somebody who doesn't qualify for assistance from the area-based scheme, let's say, for example, because the council tax banding is too high, they don't qualify for one in Scotland because they're not in receipt of a benefit. There's always the option then of the interest-free loan that's available to them. Now, it might be that the interest-free loan isn't either attractive to them or it's maybe just not suitable to them, but at least we're able to say to them, well, this is available, but it's like bullseye, this is what you could have won, you know, and yeah, they take them through. But when we come to the minimum assistance available would be the interest-free loan, but it's very much a case of whether the householder wants to do that. So it's up to them. But what we can do is lay out the options before them, and then they can decide, you know, what they want to do. Unfortunately, there are occasions when the householder is not maybe in a position to take out an interest-free loan. And difficult as it is, you know, we can give advice on energy efficiency, switching, tariffs, insulation, stuff like that, small fixes to try and help them. But there have been occasions when we just have to walk away and just admit, well, we are limited by the parameters set out by government, basically, as to what assistance is available. And we're not going to deny there are occasions when there are people that we just can't help. And it's very difficult for us in that situation, but it's a truth right to the job, basically, that there are sometimes that we can't help. But the one thing that I think you can be assured of is that we will try to help, and we will explore all avenues to see if we can help them.
Yeah, I mean, the only other way that there could be possibly help is through a home equity release program. But again, that's, I see why you're asking, Kathleen, because you kind of want someone, you know, like an app or something on a phone that says, my postcode is this, what support can I get to help me, and what, here's, you know, my type of house is all of that. That's pretty much what the smart survey is designed to do. It's designed to tease out, what are your circumstances? What it literally, and maybe I should have taken people through it on here, but it asks you what council tax band you're in, what type of house do you have, what your income level are. And it's not designed to, you know, and that information isn't shared with other people. That's kept within TIG until you get to the bottom of it that says, you know, we may need to refer you for the financial inclusion team at the council. Would you be happy for us to share your information with them? So there's or the Warmer Home Scotland team. So there's very specific stuff, but we will still come back to you and ask you before we forwarded your information on, you know, so there'll be a final step to say, do you want your, you know, do you want us to refer you to these people? And happily most people do. And that's why, you know, Donna, for example, has preferred those households in Newest to Donald. But the reality is it would almost be an advice service in its own right, you know, producing that. And, you know, we talked about doing a thing called TIGnet, you know, where you would literally, so, you know, any member of TIG staff would have on a little tablet, you know, if they're in someone's house and they get asked a question, they'll be able to put it in and go, oh, computer says you get this help. But you would imagine that would be an easy task, but there's so many variables.
Yeah.
You know, the bottom line is we have people. Donna and Charlie are there to help. They work inextricably closely with Donald and others, and you know we will find the best way to help. And you know, and if someone needs, you know, if they've got a problem with, you know, as I said, their meter, you know, where it's wired in the wrong way, so their heating is on their day rate for total heat, total control. I know it's all very technical, but anybody who has storage heaters will know what I'm talking about. And they get a £4,000 energy bill when they should have only had a £1,500 or £2,000 energy bill, you know, then you know, Kirsty MacLeod will be able to contact the energy company and negotiate with that, and we would refer on, you know. And so it's all, usually we would be able to get to an answer. Very rarely do we say there's absolutely nothing can be done for you, because at the very least we're able to say our advice for you in these circumstances will be to look at this, 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 and this, which before you didn't have that. So at least you've got some ideas now.
Okay, that's great. And it does remind me of Sally's point at the start on Bulb and other companies in the past have gone bust. And what sort of support's out there for anyone who's a customer of Bulb or any other company that might go bust in the near future?
Do not do anything. That's the best advice I can give to people. If your energy company goes bust, then there will be what's known as a supplier of last resort or something like that, where another energy company will take over your account. If you're in credit, that credit will go across to the new energy company. Sadly, if you're in debt, that debt will also go across to the new fuel company, or you might get chased by an administrator. The best thing you can do if you're having an issue with fuel debt at the point of your energy company going under and you find an administrator getting in touch with you is to contact TIG and speak to the Energy Advisory Service, and they can negotiate with those people on your behalf. And that would either be Kirsty, Martha, or Dan, who would be able to deal with things like that. But you know, the energy so-called market at the moment is bananas. And I tell you, come April next year, the most people in the islands are on a standard variable tariff, which means that they're usually with SSE or OVO, and they've been on the same tariff for all their life. Okay, and what that means is that they will be part of the price cap. So that price cap already went up by 12.5% just a few weeks ago. In April next year, it will go up by at least, I would reckon, 20%. I think it will go up another 20%. So I think, you know, it will not be unheard of for people's energy bills, for those on the capped rate, will go up by £200 or £300 come April next year. And that's on top of the £150, £180 just now. And for those people who are not on a cap, then there could be a whole sort of different ball game there. And it all depends on what type of tariff they're on at the moment. The best thing they can do, anyone can do, if you're interested in any of this type of stuff, is speak to Kirsty, Martha, or Dan in the Energy Advice Service, or speak to Donald, or speak to Donna or Charlie. Basically, speak to one of us. Okay.
Okay, that's great. Thanks. Kind of conscious of time now. Is there any other questions for our speakers or for anyone else who's here? No.
I'm sorry, I'd just like to say that's been really useful so far, because I didn't understand how this stuff connected. So thank you for that.
And Vanessa, we'd be very happy to come and do any talk to the local community. And also, Gemma, you were saying about being able to do events in the future. Donald and I are a good old tag team, and we'll be very happy to come to a venue to suit at any time.
Thanks. I think that's certainly worth thinking about. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I've worked with Donald in the past before. So I'm familiar with his capabilities in front of an audience. But yeah, it's I need to go back to my committees, to my groups, and see who would be willing to sort of host it. But I think certainly with the point made about the energy tariffs and stuff, I think it might be an idea to get something in the area in the new year, just to make people aware of that.
No, definitely. And I think, you know, getting the smart survey out to people is the fastest way, because if they're having individual issues, there's boxes on the smart survey where they can fill it in and say, I have a problem with this, or I'm worried about this. And that will be picked up immediately and then sent to the appropriate person to make direct contact. So that's if there's a newsletter going out or something like that, that's a good mechanism to capture the data in order to then contact directly people who may need assistance.
Yeah, I think that's a good note to finish on it, and just a big thank you again to Brian and Donald for their words of wisdom and support for everyone. I mean, everyone lives in a house and has energy bills, so you know it's useful for us all to hear things that we can be doing to improve our efficiency. So thank you, and we'll make sure to follow it up with contact details and any other information that anyone wants. Either get in touch with Brian or Donald, or if it's through us, that's fine too. We can direct you on in the meantime. So thank you everyone again for attending, and we'll hopefully see you again at some of our other sessions through the week. We've got North East speaking tonight at 7:30 about their plans for an environment centre and their sort of sustainability aims in general. So another interesting session to be had then. So thank you and have a nice day, everyone.
Okay.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.